Welcome to Ray Ronan Does Music, where today we're looking at quite possibly the most commercially successful album of the entire year, Ed Sheeran's Divide. This album not only advanced further on new definitions and standards for modern pop music, not only evolved Ed Sheeran's now modernly classic sound, but essentially became his very own magnum opus thus far in his career. You may know the man for his hit singles Thinking Out Loud, Lego House, Don't, and many others, but he is much more than a quick chart topper with a few good songs. In every single main album and EP he's dropped, the lyrical mastery is evident. Every song shows that Ed is not only a master of his own craft, but is setting a new standard on how to make modern mainstream pop music. And before we get into this new album, Divide, I just want to again note that while he does have these hit songs, Thinking Out Loud, Lego House, Photograph, Everything Has Changed, those types of things, while those are present, Ed Sheeran is not an artist you can just listen to the hits and base your ideals off of that. He is a man who, and I hate saying this because it sounds very demanding, his type of music is the music that you have to listen to most, if not all, of an album to actually form a clear idea of. Because even just here on Divide, he explores many different moods and pace changes. Just from 1 second it's a quick guitar strummer, and the next second it's a beautifully written piece focusing on piano and softer tones. But now actually diving into this album, no pun intended, as one of the tracks is actually called Dive In, we find familiar elements of love and loss throughout songs Perfect and New Man, both on opposite sides of the duality I just spoke of. Perfect explores the simplicity of falling in love over time, seeing a future with that perfect, again, no pun intended, person, and wanting nothing but them. Perfect actually, if I remember correctly in a couple interviews, Ed Sheeran has noted that it's his favorite song off of this entire album, both to write and perform, because it's actually, as most of his songs are, formed from a true story, but just more personal, as it's actually about a person he's fallen in love with. And again, that's not to say every love song he's written is just written for the hell of it and there's nobody actually behind it, but the honesty in that song is just bursting from the seams here. Then you go to New Man, which takes a complete left turn with an almost playfully spiteful tone in how Sheeran talks about not caring about his former lover's new interests, but then listing off all the qualities that make him so perfect to this new person. With his eyebrows plucked and his asshole bleached, I heard he's got every single Ministry CD. That type of thing, where he's just, again, just picking at this person it bit by bit, but in that way where it's like, oh, I don't hate you, I'm not making fun of you, it's just, here's X, Y, and Z of what makes you a douchebag. And that contradictory stance is done quite well. It's something that a lot of artists struggle with, where 1 second they're a serious band, but then in a song they add the playful tone or complete mood change, and it just doesn't go well. But Ed Sheeran is one of the people in the modern pop music scene who can bounce back and forth for that. The stories that can be painted in so short a track's time is unparalleled in any genre today with Ed Sheeran. A lot of people comparing him to people like, who's the guy from Maroon 5, Adam Levine, or just other songwriters like Chester Bennington who can paint emotion. I find myself more often than not drawing quality traces to people like David Bowie and Queen, who can put together seamless ballads. And that's what Ed Sheeran is. I'm not saying he's the second coming of Freddie Mercury or anything, but essentially he is just not only for popular, and for the sake of saying he is popular and writes popular music, his songs aren't just hits for the hell of it. They are pure and simple modern classics that will be remembered eventually as time goes on. Unfortunately, I keep drawing the comparison back to old people like David Bowie, Queen, Jimi Hendrix, but I can see songs like Thinking Out Loud or Shape of You is sort of becoming our modern generation's Bohemian Rhapsody, or I don't know any David Bowie songs. Space Oddity, is that a movie or a song? Major Tom, that one. But going on from that, Castle on the Hill, just to move back into the songs, is a well-done callback to his youth and former ways, speaking fondly of how I used to get drunk with an old friend group, and act out moments that seemed very just storybook and pure in innocence. One friend left to sell clothes, one lives down by the coast, and so on and so on. As all these people are growing up, he's grown up too and heard of these people, what they're doing. He's seen them grow up, and it's just a very nostalgic thing. And you move on to these hits like Shape of You that are bound, with songs like that, there are some that are bound to be easily forgotten. Some songs that just slip through the cracks and don't have as much replayability or seemingly quality behind them. But then you have things like Nancy Mulligan, which is a great example of great storytelling being lost in the shuffle here. Telling the story of Ed's parents meeting and falling in love, both a polar opposite feeling instrumentally to Perfect, but sharing quite a similar premise, seemingly. This album flows together perfectly, and I keep using that word because just like the song's title here in the album, it's actually, I dare say, almost a perfect album. Each song is reflecting onto the next with the ease and no quality lost. Everything fits together so perfectly with the contrast of New Man to Perfect, with the feeling and mood change from Shape of You to Castle on a Hill, from lower hits like Bibia Yay Yay and How Would You Feel Payan or whatever the heck. Don't ask why I have a comb. It's just so many of these elements and stories and ideas that could so easily get lost and convoluted in other people's albums, and stories that could just very well just be lost in the shuffle. Even those that do get lost are still being shown off and given their opportunity to shine and be amazing all in their own rights. I'm happy to say it will be difficult for Ed Sheeran to top Divide in the future, but I thought something very similar when he initially released Multiply. So, with everything said here, I'm going to be giving this album a 9.5 out of 10. Nearly flawless, but I cannot bear to ever give an album a 10 out of 10 rating. I highly encourage you to go check out the release for yourself. In fact, I actually have the CD right here, the deluxe edition, and I can attest, I'm not being paid or anything, I can attest to this album. You will not be disappointed if you get this. It was a birthday present. It came out around my birthday. It was honestly the better present I got out of everything else. So, like I said, 9.5 out of 10. You gotta go check out the album for yourself. But until then, be sure to go check down in the description for my personal favorite from the album. Recommended section should be doing its usual thing of either relevant things or non-relevant things. And if you enjoyed or disagree with any of my points made here, be sure to like, dislike, subscribe, and or unsubscribe. And I'll see you in the next video.